The movie begins with information on a strange disease outbreak. It's early summer, and a dreadful virus has transformed people into gruesome creatures known as mutants. Their only glimmer of hope is a safe haven called Noah, a military base free from the infection. We see some people quarreling, and an injured woman falls down near the scene. She does not waste time and desperately flees into the dense forest. She is covered in blood and bruises. The woman looks terrified and keeps looking back. She seems afraid of someone or something that might be following her. As the woman races away from the pursuing mutants, fate takes a cruel twist. She emerges from the clutches of the forest and right onto the road where an ambulance accidentally rams her, ending her unfortunate journey. Inside the ambulance, we find 4 people. Sonia, a dedicated paramedic. Behind the wheel is her husband Marco, and accompanying them are 2 police officers. One of the officers is infected, teetering on the edge of mutation. As the vehicle hits the woman, they do not stop, rather they go even faster. The policewoman tells Marco to step on it and flee the place as soon as possible. Then she comes back to check on her colleague only to find his condition worsening. Although Sonia assures that the vital organs are not affected, the woman can clearly see that there is no going back for him. There are teeth marks on his chest, and his abdomen is covered in blood as if someone tried biting him. Suddenly the man vomits blood. Alarmed by his deteriorating condition, she orders Sonia and Marco to remove him from the vehicle. When they take longer than necessary, she points her gun at Marco and forcefully, at gunpoint, makes them remove the man. They put him on the ground and moved back inside the ambulance upon her order. Without hesitation, she takes matters into her own hands and shoots her afflicted partner, ensuring the safety of the group. Inside the ambulance, the 2 people look pale and scared. After making sure that the infected man is no longer breathing, the woman comes back near the ambulance and tells them that they need to clean up and disinfect the ambulance before setting off. Marco quickly gets busy cleaning up the ambulance, while Sonia covers the poor deceased corpse and sits beside it. Meanwhile, the officer somberly looks on and smokes a cigarette. Soon they resume their journey through the thin road amidst the woods. While on the road, as the officer is reloading her weapons, Sonia inquires about the legitimacy of Noah. The woman stops for a while, but her response remains elusive and unclear. Sometimes later, they pause for a brief rest. Marco cautions Sonia about the policewoman's ruthless nature. However, Sonia insists that they depend on her for their survival. Continuing their journey, they make a pit stop at a gas station to refuel the ambulance. There, the officer loads a gun and hands it to Marco, asking if he can use it. The man takes the gun cautiously, and the officer descends. All alone in the ambulance, Marco embraces Sonia affectionately and tells her to leave in case of any emergency. But the woman refuses. She tells him that she would not leave without him. Shortly, Marco also leaves, leaving Sonia all alone in the vehicle. Marco comes up at the gas tank only to discover it to be empty. Then he and the policewoman scour the area for supplies. They enter a garage filled with tires and other stuff. Slowly they search around and come upon a room that the officer enters. It's during this search that the policewoman makes a chilling discovery. A room filled with human cadavers and a rotting smell, which adds an eerie layer of mystery to their already tense situation. Disgusted and preoccupied, the policewoman fails to notice an unexpected presence looming behind her. In a sudden turn of events, she's ambushed and finds herself in a desperate struggle to defend herself. Marco, alerted by the commotion, rushes to the scene only to find the policewoman grappling with what appears to be a mutant. She urgently instructs Marco to eliminate the threat, but he can't bring himself to pull the trigger. Instead, he strikes the attacker forcefully in the face. Bleeding, the person runs to cower at a side and they find that the assailant is not a mutant after all. Hearing all the commotion from outside, Sonia also rushes in at that moment. She sees the scene and promptly tends to the distressed man. They find out that the poor man has autism and is overwhelmed by fear. Sonia advocates for taking him along, but the policewoman vehemently disagrees. When the couple tries to question her motives, tensions escalate and the policewoman brandishes her firearm. She demands the vehicle keys. Marco, determined to protect his wife, raises his own gun and firmly refuses to surrender the keys. Fearing the unexpected turn of events, the autistic man impulsively attacks the policewoman. In response, the policewoman shoves the man towards Marco and relentlessly opens fire, hitting the poor innocent man. Acting swiftly to protect her loved ones, Sonia seizes the gun and shoots the policewoman in the neck, incapacitating her. In the chaos that ensues, the policewoman blindly shoots her weapon, accidentally hitting Marco in the stomach. Sonia rushes to tend to her injured husband, but her attention is drawn to the policewoman, who, despite her condition, is about to fire upon them again. With no other choice, Sonia acts decisively and shoots the policewoman in the face, ending the threat once and for all. Struggling to stay alive, Sonia and Marco return to the ambulance, where she provides vital first aid to her husband. As she is working hard to tend to her injured husband, she hears terrifying beastly roars from behind. Afraid of the calamity that might befall them, the poor woman is left with no other choice but to flee with her unconscious husband. Her heart beats fast and she keeps calling out to Marco, telling him to stay with her despite his unconscious state. She races to the driver's seat and speeds away. Regrettably, the ambulance sputters to a halt, having run out of gasoline. Left with no alternative, the two seek refuge in an abandoned building nestled deep within the forest. The woman bravely takes Marco inside and settles in a corner, after making sure that it is safe. She then starts tending to his gunshot wound in the almost dark room. After tending to the wound and cleaning him up, Sonya embarks on a mission to locate the power fuse box, hoping to find a glimmer of hope in their dire circumstances. While carefully wandering around the building, she finds a dozen corpses badly mutilated. Shaking with fear, she still persists and bravely moves through them. After a while, she arrives at a hallway and luckily finds the fuse. Finally, the place is illuminated. Sonya sighs in relief and comes back to the room where Marco rests. The scene shifts from struggle to a more peaceful moment as the couple rests together, sharing an embrace rather than a battle. In the tranquility, Sonya's ears catch the distant sound of a helicopter soaring overhead, a glimmer of hope that they might finally be saved. However, as she gently strokes her husband's hair while he sleeps, a disconcerting realization dawns on her. Marco's hair is falling out. The next morning, Marco gasps awake from a nightmare in which he sees mutants. His heart almost bursts open as he slowly tries to calm down and observe his surroundings. Meanwhile, Sonya is back in the ambulance. She is trying to establish an emergency connection with the military base, Noah. She establishes a connection through the radio and almost gets some short and comprehensible responses. She tells them that they are in an abandoned building deep in the forest, and that she heard helicopter sounds above them earlier. She confirms their location again and again, but all she manages to discern is an incomprehensible radio transmission. Suddenly, Marco's unexpected appearance at the window jolts Sonya. Shortly, they return to the building where Sonya assures Marco that she has successfully made contact with the base at Noah. She expresses confidence that their message reached the base, offering a ray of hope for their rescue. However, Marco remains skeptical and reminds her not to place unwavering trust in others. She then checks on his wound, but her demeanor changes. A worried expression crosses her face. An unspoken truth looms between them. Marco had ingested the blood of the autistic man when the policewoman shot him in the head. Sonya, unwilling to broach the topic, quickly shifts gears, raising concerns about potential bandits who might come after them, so they must hurry up and prepare. Then, the couple ascends to the rooftop, where they light a fire, patiently waiting for the rescue chopper they hope will arrive. Returning back to the building, Marco suddenly begins to cough up blood, a distressing sight that leaves Sonya feeling powerless. The man thrashes and struggles. He pushes Sonya aside and falls to the ground, coughing up an unhealthy amount of blood. Now it becomes more than clear that the autistic man from their earlier encounter was indeed infected by the virus. But just as with other diseases, some individuals possess a genetic immunity to the virus, and thus he did not show the signs of being infected. The woman finally snaps out of her panicked state and quickly rushes to the man's side. With difficulty, she manages to calm him down. As the unbearable moments pass by, the grim reality becomes clear. Marco has been infected through the ingestion of blood, even without a direct bite. His condition worsens, marked by severe convulsions and the unsettling sight of him coughing up blood. When Marco regains consciousness, a somber conversation unfolds about the virus. Sonya believes that the virus inside Marco's body is still in its early, dormant stage, giving him only a short window of 3 days or less before it takes full control. Despite Marco's deteriorating appearance, Sonya bravely approaches him, offering reassurance that help is en route. Overwhelmed by fear, Marco pleads with Sonya not to abandon him to become a mutant. His distress drives him to run a hand through his hair, where he discovers it falling out. He panics and, in his desperation, Marco reaches for a shotgun, intending to avoid becoming a blood and flesh-eating monster. Who can blame him? Seeing her love in this state, Sonya's heart breaks. She intervenes just in time, preventing him from carrying out this desperate act. Sonya reveals a secret she's been hiding for some time. She shows Marco a bite wound she received just before the quarantine measures were imposed, inflicted by one of the infected patients she had been attending to. Remarkably, she did not succumb to the virus. Just like the autistic man they encountered earlier, Sonya turned out to be genetically immune to the virus. She believes that with the help of scientists, they can create an antidote using her blood to cure Marco. Saying that, she slowly approaches the desperate and terrified man. With a gentle touch, Sonya takes the gun from Marco's trembling hand. She draws him close, assuring him of her unwavering presence and support. They embrace lovingly and Sonya promises to never leave him behind. As time marches on, the virus continues its slow and relentless consumption of Marco. He writhes in pain, and bald patches start to appear on his head. The vomiting of blood never stops and he starts to lose his teeth. Sometime later, Marco's agony drives him to search for morphine. He trashes the place, looking everywhere for them but to no avail. On the brink of near insanity, he shouts at Sonya to administer the medicine. The woman, aware of the consequences, refuses to administer it. Marco becomes aggressive and attempts to attack Sonya, eventually grabbing a gun and pointing it at her. In a rush of fear, Sonya rushes outside into the open. Meanwhile, back inside, Marco's screams echo through the building as he stumbles on his way to the restroom. Even his urine is tainted with blood. Poor man must be bearing hell. Amid this turmoil, Sonya decides to attempt a desperate measure. She transfers her own blood to Marco, making a small incision in his foot to drain some of the infected blood and initiate a blood transfusion. Sonya holds onto the hope that her immune blood may hold the key to saving her husband. Yet, it becomes painfully apparent that this effort yields no positive results. In a cruel twist, Marco accidentally spills some of his blood into Sonya's mouth, deepening the complexity of their dire situation. Sonya rushes to the bathroom, desperate to cleanse herself of Marco's blood. Unbeknownst to her, Marco stealthily follows her. When she turns to see her husband, and smeared in blood, a surge of fear courses through her. It's abundantly clear that the man standing before her is no longer the rational, composed Marco she once knew. Along with his clothes, he is stripped of his reason and humanity too. Rest in peace, rational Marco. Acting on instinct, Sonya flees, as she should, and Marco gives chase, as a monster would. Fortunately, she manages to burst inside a room and locks him out. The man bangs on the locked door again and again. His frenzied demands to open the door echoes through the room, as he pounds on it with all his might. Meanwhile, inside the room, Sonya grasps a butcher knife with trembling hands. It is her sole means of defense. As the relentless banging subsides, she cautiously approaches the door, straining to hear her husband's voice. In a moment of vulnerability, Marco's pleas and apologies reach Sonya's ears. He admits that he's lost control of himself, succumbing to the virus's relentless grip. Driven by love and compassion, Sonya finally gives in. She is unable to resist Marco's vulnerable voice. Slowly, she lowers the knife and unlocks the door. The poor man has finally come back to his senses and is crying. He apologizes to her and begs her to forgive him since he is unable to control himself. Sonya's heart is a mess. She quietly covers him with a sheet and embraces him in a tender hug. That instant, their enduring bond and love for each other transcends the horrors of the virus. Later, after much soul-searching, Sonya and Marco reach a heart-wrenching decision. Sonya prepares to euthanize Marco, granting him the mercy of release from his torment. She administers the first, causing him to drift into a deep slumber. However, as she stands on the precipice of carrying out the final step, Sonya's love prevails over her resolve. She hesitates, choosing not to administer the second that would bring about Marco's irreversible demise. Instead, she drags her slumbering husband to the basement and secures the door, confining him within. Before departing, she promises him that she will be back. Sonya rushes up and diligently packs up her belongings. But a sudden noise from outside captures her attention. She picks up her pistol and loads it when she hears more sounds of glass crashing. Curiosity compels her to venture out and investigate, but before she can react, someone smacks her in the face with a gun, rendering her unconscious. When Sonya regains consciousness, she initially believes she's conversing with a soldier from Noah, the military base she had desperately tried to contact. However, reality dawns on her. These people are not her saviors, but the bandits who had intercepted her distress call earlier. They demand the keys to the ambulance. But Sonya deceives them, claiming ignorance of the key's whereabouts. She adds that the ambulance is devoid of fuel, rendering it useless even if they obtain the key. The female bandit suspects Sonya of deception and inquires about the whereabouts of the other person, referring to Marco. Sonya concocts a tale, asserting that she had fabricated Marco's existence over the radio and that she is, in fact, alone. Tensions escalate, and the woman is on the verge of attacking Sonya when the bandit leader intervenes, ordering her to prepare him a cup of coffee. He then takes Sonya to one of his injured comrades, who requires medical attention after their encounter with the mutants. Turns out, the bandits were attacked by the cannibals, while everyone was busy fleeing. The injured boy jumped in to save his brother who was being attacked. That is how he ended up getting injured. Frank leaves and Sonya is left alone with the injured man and another sad-looking bald bandit. In the meantime, the female bandit attempts to charm her leader, persuading him to take the ambulance and escape with her. On the other side, while tending to the injured man, Sonya inquires about the radio held by him. He explains that their radio can only receive transmissions but cannot transmit signals. Sonya seizes the opportunity to mention military base Noah, but the man remains skeptical and cautious, not readily trusting her words. She mentions helicopters that often travel this area, but the man tells her that they never stop and rescue. As they talk, in the dimly lit corner of the room, another bandit named Virgil discreetly notices Sonya's bite wound, but keeps his observations to himself. Soon, the bandit leader returns, issuing orders for Sonya and Virgil to gather fuel the following morning. As time passes, Sonya seizes an opportunity to slip into the basement. However, her intentions are foiled as Virgil catches her in the act. Holding a menacing machete to her neck, he scrutinizes her closely after she confesses to being infected. When she notices that it isn't working, she drops another bombshell. She's carrying an unborn child. Hearing this revelation, Virgil releases his grip on her, his demeanor somewhat softening. She finally breathes a sigh of relief. She then cautiously asks him if there was a radio where they were. When he nods, she asks him to take her there, but he demands for the ambulance keys. He mentions that he has to bury his family members. Upon recognizing that Virgil might not be as heartless as he seems, Sonya strikes a deal with him. In exchange for allowing her to use the radio from the bandits' hideout, she promises to provide him with the keys to the ambulance so he can give his family a proper burial. When morning arrives, Sonya and the man set out on their mission. Unbeknownst to Sonya, Marco's condition worsens every minute and he is almost seconds away from becoming a full-fledged mutant. The duo reach the bandits' hideout, where Sonya hands over the ambulance's keys to Virgil while making her way to the radio. As Sonya urgently calls for an emergency evacuation and Virgil collects fuel, a distant noise catches their attention. Virgil grabs his machete and investigates the source of the sound. Suddenly, a mutant appears and launches an attack against him. The two engage in a fierce struggle, with Sonya attempting to aid Virgil but struggling to get a clear shot, possibly because the mutant bears a resemblance to Virgil, with its bald appearance. In the end, Virgil manages to subdue the mutant in a fierce battle by thrusting a hook into its neck and taking away its life. Unfortunately, he is bitten by the mutant during their intense battle. Sonya finds herself in a harrowing dilemma, her gun aimed at Virgil, but she hesitates to pull the trigger, unwilling to take another life. Eventually, she stops pointing the gun at him. All of a sudden, they hear dozens of mutant growls. It turns out that they have been surrounded. Amid the cacophony of growling mutants drawing near, Sonya's decision not to harm Virgil proves crucial as he valiantly defends them. He hurls Molotov cocktails, confronting the approaching mutants head-on. Desperation drives Sonya to reveal her immunity to the virus, hoping it will convince the military to come to their rescue. After sending the message, she turns around and fires at the mutants. Shortly after, Sonya's ammunition runs dry, leaving her powerless to assist Virgil. In a desperate bid for survival, she flees back to the building as the mutants descend upon him, their voracious appetites targeting the poor man. On her way to the building, Sonya narrowly escapes one mutant. The bandit leader takes a shot, saving her in the nick of time. Meanwhile, Marco has fully transformed into a mutant, and his guttural growls echo through the building. The leader forcibly drags Sonya inside, demanding information about the fuel and key. His violent onslaught intensifies, and he seizes the shotgun from the female bandit. Sonya's anguished cries reach Marco's ears, eliciting a spine-chilling response. Marco's growls reverberate so loudly that even the bandit leader and his companion can hear them. The female bandit trembles in terror. To make matters worse, a horde of mutants is closing in on the building. The two bandits leave Sonya, barricading themselves inside a room with the wounded comrade. But unfortunately for them, the mutants soon catch up. They breach their barricades with ease and start storming into the room. The leader and the female bandit run away together, while Sonya helps the wounded bandit out of the room. They face a mutant, who Sonya easily takes out. The leader and the female bandit make their way to a library, where they use a smoke grenade for cover. However, when the woman is spotted by a mutant, the leader callously abandons her, locking her inside to get devoured. Unfortunately for him, a massive mutant looms overhead, sealing his own grim destiny. The mutant wastes no time, dragging the bandit leader away to meet a gruesome end, leaving behind only his putrid remains. What goes around, comes around. On the other side, amidst the chaos, Sonya and the wounded bandit suddenly find themselves under attack by Marco. Sonya grasps the gun in her trembling hands, but when she realizes that her assailant is her husband, she once again falters, unable to pull the trigger. She watches helplessly as Marco brutally dispatches the wounded bandit, beating him to oblivion and then devouring him. As Marco's attention turns to Sonya, she retreats into a room and slams the door shut, narrowly escaping his relentless pursuit. Summoning her resolve, Sonya finally manages to gather the courage to shoot her husband through the door. However, when she investigates outside, Marco is nowhere to be found. Sonya hears the radio confirm her call for evacuation, with just 12 minutes until the estimated time of arrival. She braces herself for what she knows will be 12 agonizing minutes of survival. Quietly, she navigates through the building, but encounters with mutants are inevitable. One mutant catches her off guard, but miraculously, Marco comes to her aid, battling the mutant on her behalf. Spotting a vent, Sonya quickly enters it, eventually reaching the vent's exterior end. However, she finds herself surrounded by locked metal fences on the outside, with Marco hot on her trail. Trapped and cornered, Sonya helplessly watches as Marco draws nearer. To her astonishment, Marco refrains from attacking her, instead fixating on strangely caressing her face and womb back and forth. Summoning her last ounce of courage, Sonya pushes her zombie-like husband away. Fortunately, he becomes ensnared in barbed wires, limiting his movement. Armed with a broken tube, Sonya finally ends Marco's torment. Till the very last moment, Sonya's hands falter. Shortly after, the mutants swarm around the fence, only to be swiftly taken down by the arriving military forces. Finally, they remembered that they are supposed to save people. The movie ends with Sonya being rescued, and a soldier offering her assurance that they will provide care for her and her unborn child.